Are you old enough to remember those commercials? Help, I've fallen and I can't get up. Well, I want to show you one of the reasons that happens and what you can do to prevent it or radically reduce your risk of it ever happening to you. So, one of the probably most common reasons that people fall when they get older is because they lose control. And I'm not talking about their, urinary incontinence here. They lose control of the front of their body, or what we would call the anterior chain, right? So, the front of the body is from here down to your feet. And a lot of the times what happens is the major areas like the front of the hips, the abdominals, even the upper shoulders, everything kind of goes like this, right? And if you're used to sitting a lot and you've been sitting for decades, these things, these structures, these muscles, these body parts tend to get a little short, kind of get locked short just a little bit. Now, this isn't about stretching. I've done some videos on stretching. I've done a lot of teaching on stretching. It's not what we think it is. There's a lot of misunderstandings. There's a lot of inaccurate understandings about stretching, what it actually does. It's not necessarily all that beneficial for us. What really helps us to improve our function is more dynamic loading, or getting a muscle longer under tension and then releasing the tension. So just repetitive. That really helps to sort of create almost like what you would call like a fluid fill effect, a hydrating, a lengthening of that body part. There's a lot of structures in there, right? A lot of people want to focus on one muscle, right? Oh, let me stretch my psoas, let me stretch my quads, let me stretch my hamstrings. That's not necessarily what needs to be done. What needs to be done is those areas of the body need to understand how to control motion once it's been initiated. So I've done, lots of videos on different body parts, like don't stretch your hamstrings, that kind of thing. So you can check those out. But right now I want to focus on loading the front of the body. I want to focus on you understanding that as you get older, as the years tick by, if you do a lot of sitting, you do a lot of forward work because our eyes face forward, right? So we tend to use this, we tend to work in front of our body most of the time. Most people aren't working back here. But we need to be able to extend our body backward, right? And have the front of your body load. Now, I am not one of those loosey-goosey, hyper-flexible people. I've never worked in a circus. I never really did much gymnastics. I liked it when I was a kid, but didn't have much opportunity. Our school didn't really have much equipment. I started getting pretty good on the uneven parallel bars, and then somebody broke into the gym and they broke them. So we weren't in a bad area or anything, but vandalism, it happens. And so anyhow, so to get back to that, I'm not especially gifted at this stuff, but what I am very experienced at is loading my body in 3 planes of motion. It's what I teach. It's what I do. I do classes in it all the time. I do private consulting. I record all kinds of content. So my body is constantly getting loaded in 3 planes of motion. So my muscles know how to respond properly when I go to perform an authentic human task. And that's what your body needs to be able to do as long as you are above ground in this life, right? So if you're at risk of falling as you age, one of the biggest risks is falling backward. And the reason that becomes a risk as you age, if you're not training your body to work well in all 3 planes of motion, is the front of the body loses the ability, or it becomes impaired or deficient in being able to control you as you bend backward. So you get an older person who's lost function in the front of their body. If you ask them to like reach a hand up overhead and they start to, they're going to grab something because they're going to fall back and smack their head, right? So you need to make sure that you're training the front of your body. Most of us, the back of our body works pretty well, unless you've got chronic pain. If you're, if you're squatting, if you're, lunging, you're able to reach forward and you're relatively okay. The back of your body is loading, at least it's functional, right? I mean, there's always ways to improve that, so you can check out some of the other videos. I'm going to focus on the front of the body for this one. So just kind of check it out. Make sure you're safe. Hold on to something, okay? And see, can you bend backward, right? And how far backward can you bend? Now, this isn't about becoming Gumby and being able to bend yourself in half backwards. This is about what happens with your stability, what happens with your feeling secure and safe when you bend backward, right? And don't do this if you're at risk of falling. Have somebody close by, have somebody right behind you or somebody holding onto your belt or something so that you're safe. But if you go to bend backward and you feel like you're going to fall, you need to train that. And even if you don't feel like you're going to fall, but if you feel some restriction, if you feel some limitation, maybe you do feel some pain because the front hip flexors do attach to T12 down through L4 on either side. And so if you go to lengthen those muscles and you feel a bite or a pull here, then yeah, those muscles they're like, okay, I don't want to get longer. I don't like what you're doing to me. So the goal of training your body properly is to not experience pain, especially repetitively, and to make sure that you're successful. But if you have a limitation or an impairment or a deficit, you want to work at your threshold. So what that means is, say I can go this far and I feel fine, right? Well, actually, let's stick with the front of the body. Let's do a demonstration for that motion. So say I can step forward and that's okay there, but if I go a little further, now I feel something in my low back. Or maybe if you put yourself in a little stride position, you get a little better load here. And maybe I can do this, but if I do this, I now get something bites me or I'm losing my balance. So you want to be right at that threshold where you don't cross over it, where you're at risk of pain or falling or injuring yourself, but you're close to it. And you want to work there. So you're still successful, you're competent, you're confident, you can do repetitive motions very well, and then you build on that success. But if you're way away from your threshold, if you're just barely doing anything, you're not going to get benefit from this. So hopefully that's making sense, right? And you can go ahead and, put in the comments and let me know if this all makes sense to you or if you have any questions. So how do we get the front of the body to load? Well, it depends on where your starting point is. If you're relatively up there in years and you've already lost a lot of stability, and if you go to do this, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall and get really injured, then you're going to have to start very, very slowly. And a good idea would be to hold on to the kitchen sink, do a little bit of what I call a stride position, so you've got one foot forward. Make sure you've got a lot of width between your feet. Hang on to that sink and kind of let your hips go forward and your shoulders go back. And just start loading that muscle very gently, right? It's the whole front of the body that you're loading. You're just going to load a little more on the right because that leg is back, but you're also loading your abs, right? You can even hold on with one hand so you're safe, and you can add an arm and you can get more load, okay? So if there's no pain, get as much load as you can. Go back as far as you can as long as you're safe holding on. Now, you don't want that hand that's holding on to pull you back, because the goal is to work the muscles, to get the muscles to get longer. The muscles are now controlling me, kind of like a slingshot. When you pull it back, it's controlling, and then when you let it go, now it's going to release that energy. So we want to load and unload, right? We want to load that energy in that muscle, build that tension, and then unload that tension. That's how you train the front of your body to control you, so you can reach up overhead, you can reach on a shelf overhead, and you're not at risk of falling, okay, as you age. Now, if you're not really experiencing a great risk of falling right now, but you want to prevent that or radically reduce your risk of that, right? Because stuff can happen no matter how well prepared we are. You know, it's kind of like make your car as safe as you can. Good tires, good brakes, good, checking all the fluids. You make it as good as you can. Something can still happen to the car, but you've radically reduced the risk of anything happening, right? So that's what we're doing here. So now, if you're not really at risk of falling and you just want to, like I said, do your best to prevent it and reduce the risk, you can train yourself in the front of the body. And I'm going to show you, I'll show you like 2 or 3 moves. So one of them would be where you're standing still and you're loading what we would call from the top down. So the arms are going to be doing the drive. So say you've got a wall behind you, and what you're going to do is you're going to reach up and touch the wall behind you. And you can step as far away from the wall, find that threshold, right? I can get even further here. Find that threshold. I'm pretty close to my end range here. I could probably inch forward just a little bit more, but I don't have any pain and I don't really have any limitations. But that's a really good way to start loading the front of the body. You can go into a stride position so that the leg that's back, so say I want to load my left side a little bit more than my right, and I can reach overhead with just my right arm. So it's opposite leg and arm, right? So it's this leg, this arm, and I reach overhead, and what this is going to do is I'm going to rotate, and now I can go a little bit further to really kind of get a little, no, I could even go further, but I just want to demonstrate this. So I'm going to rotate and reach up behind with the opposite arm. That's going to load more the front of the left hip and the whole front of the body and really help, and repetitively, that's going to really help me. And then, of course, you would always do it on the opposite side as well, right? So right side, back, and now my left arm. And you can see I'm reaching up overhead, but I'm also looking and I'm rotating to that direction. So that's going to lengthen and load even more here. So there's a couple of great ideas. If you really want to do a little bit more from, say, the bottom up, then you would do more stepping. But you always want to add arms if you can, so that you're really getting the whole front of the body, right? So say I want to step forward, so I'll just do a comfortable step forward and I'm going to load. Now the goal here again is I'm getting a little bit more in the front of my left hip, and my whole front of my body is really loading. But I want you to see I'm really doing my best to get my shoulders as flexed as I can, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But you want to get them up and back as far as you can. If you can get those past your ears without any pain or problems, that's great. Turn your palms in so it kind of reduces your risk of any impingement issues. If you've got shoulder impingement, that's a whole nother story. But the goal is we don't want to try to create any. So palms are facing in, and you really want to get those shoulders back as far as you can. So, and I'm looking up as I bend backward, right? I am keeping that right heel down as I do that, because that's going to give me a little bit more front hip action. It's also going to help me make sure that my ankles are good, because a lot of the times as people age, their ankles get very stiff. And if you see people walking like this, right, they don't have any ankle motion. They don't have any ability. They're terrified of picking up their foot, because if they're on one foot for any length of time, they're at risk of falling, losing their balance. And they can't land on their heel because they don't have any dorsiflexion. Their toes just don't come up. Their ankles are stiff. So they're walking like this, which is really not happy. So if you do this and you keep the heel down and that knee straight, you're mobilizing your ankles, right? The back foot, that ankle's getting mobilized. And of course you do both sides. And I've got videos on mobilizing your ankles. So then I think it might be under the knee videos and some other videos, making sure those ankles stay nice and mobile. That's another huge thing as you age that kind of increases your risk of falling if those ankles aren't performing well on all three planes. Also creates chronic pain in the knees, the back, the neck, when you walk, hike, all those kind of things. So it's a really good way to, you really want to know how to train your ankles in all three planes of motion. But I don't want to get off on a tangent. Just know that that's important, right, for reducing your risk of falling as you age. So loading the front of the body. Just really get those arms up. And the reason you want to try to get your shoulders as flexed as you can is because it requires your upper thoracic spine, which is your trunk. Your trunk is between your neck and your low back. It's where all 12 ribs attach. You've got 12 vertebrae in the thoracic spine, and each vertebrae has a rib coming off both sides, right? The lower ribs are the floating ribs. They don't come around and attach in the front, but all the other ribs do. They attach at the sternum here, right? That breastbone. So it's important that that trunk extends as well or bends backward, especially at the top. Those top levels, if you're a lot of this, especially if you're starting to get any kind of a dowager's hump, then that's going to round out the top of that T-spine, and now you're going to have a lot of trouble getting your arm to fully flex, because full flexion at the shoulder requires that upper thoracic spine to extend. And I'll show you the difference. If I kind of stick my head forward a little bit and I don't let anything move in my spine up here, I can only go to here. I mean, you could come here right now and try to push my arm and it won't go any further than this. But if I let my head come up and my spine move, I can come all the way back here, because now my thoracic spine is extending as that arm comes up. It has to, because of your shoulder blade, the scapula. And I've got a whole section on shoulder videos if you want to check that out. But this is a big part of not falling backward, making sure the front of the body loads well. That upper thoracic spine has to extend. If you're like this and you go to try to lean back, you're gonna lose your balance. So hopefully this is making sense. Working the front of the body, making sure that, and this isn't about doing crunches and sit-ups. You want to lengthen your abdominals so that they learn how to load properly. Laying on the floor and doing a crunch just makes it shorten well, but it's still not really well trained at getting longer and controlling that motion as you bend backward. You really want to train it that way. It's like specificity of training, right? Do the task at hand that you want to be able to do well. And if you want to be able to reach up overhead and bend backward well, then you want to train in that. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. Please hit the like button if you like it. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And I look forward to coming back and providing more information on reducing fall risk as you age. I'll see you soon.